What is going on, everyone? Vlad Killjoy back again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about a conspiracy theory dealing with chapter 2 that's just far-fetched enough that it might actually be true. This theory takes us all the way back to chapter 1 season 6, where I think we got our first look of the actual mothership that's in game right now. So grab your tinfoil hats and strap in, because this gets interdimensional. So before we jump into the conspiracy, there's a couple of things that you got to keep in mind that really lay the foundation of this theory. Number one, loops on loops on loops. Each chapter is a larger loop of the smaller loop that we see every time that we jump into a match. The smaller loops are what the matches really are, and they reset every 22 minutes. But we see in the Fortnite times Batman issue 5, maybe issue 6, that the IO actually can change the loop depending on what they want done. Number 2, the 0 point is OP. The 0 point is incredibly powerful and can really change the flow of time and space, as we've seen in the past with chapter 1 season X with the infamous black hole event that lasted 72 hours. Number 3, Singularity is the mothership's pilot. So I've been stating since the very beginning of this season that Singularity is the one actually controlling the mothership. And I believe this because of chapter 1 season 9, after the mech versus monster fight. We know that Singularity was controlling the mech suit, and after the fight she takes off into space. Singularity is also known as the protector of the 0 point, and some people actually believe that Singularity is also Paradigm, because they share a lot of similar features as far as like armor, body, facial structures, all that good stuff. But more on that later on in the video. Number 4, underground UFO. So in the opening cinematic of chapter 2 season 7, we actually get a brief shot of a underground UFO. It's in this cave-like setting, and I honestly believe that that could be the mothership that we see now, but in a different dimension. We don't have too much information on what that UFO is. We've never seen that UFO as far as we know, and it's still not in the game right now. Where is it? Why is it there? We're gonna get into that in this video. So before we jump into the theory, I just want to remind y'all that over 50% of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. So if I could just get 1% of y'all to hit that subscribe button with the bell turned on, so that way y'all never miss my uploads, it would mean the world to me, and it would help me out dramatically to keep on making these videos. Taking all above into account, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this theory. Part 1. I think the first time that we saw the mothership was actually in season 7 of chapter 1. That's right, the vault. I believe the vault was the actual underground already crashed mothership that we seen in the chapter 2 cinematic for this season. There's a couple of things that really support this theory. One, they look incredibly similar. The chapter 1 version is just a little bit more weathered and oxidized than the one that we see now, and that makes sense if it's been crashed and underground for the longest time, especially with Loot Lake right over it. Obviously, after Kevin the Cube came through and kind of wiped out Loot Lake, it became visible to the air, which would actually make it more oxidized and like kind of rusty looking. But during the chapter 1 season 8 unvaulted event, we enter the vault, and inside there on the desk we actually see Singularity's helmet along with the 0 point. So with the UFO containing the 0 point, Singularity's helmet being on the desk, that kind of like backs up my theory with the UFO that we see underground actually being the chapter 1 UFO 0 point vault area. And if all of that is true, with Singularity's helmet being inside there, that further proves my point with Singularity being the pilot of the mothership that we see now in chapter 2 season 7. except this mothership has yet to crash. But we know because the live event that's going to be happening this season is involving crashing the mothership. Sloane's got a plan to blow up the mothership, and she's afraid that it's going to crash into somewhere that's highly populated. So she's trying to keep all that from happening. So will the mothership actually crash? Where's it going to land? And are we right about Singularity being the pilot? We'll find out more information on this as this season goes on, but I highly believe that this is going to be true. Part 2. I don't think that the loop is actually resetting us back in time per se, but actually sending us to almost a similar dimension. This really makes sense with the Rick and Morty collab that's going on in game right now, because we see Rick traveling to different dimensions all the time, whether he messes up the universe that they're currently in and he's trying to go and replace himself into another dimension that is completely similar to the one that he messed up, except in this dimension he didn't mess anything up. Also, it would make sense because when we drop into games, there's not 100% chest spawn rate, right? So with that, the chest spawns aren't going to be in the same spot every time, which makes sense if we're actually in a alternate dimension, because things aren't going to be exactly the same in a different dimension as we are currently in. So each loop is actually a similar dimension than the one previous to it. That's why the chests don't spawn in the same spot each match. The floor loot isn't the same each time, and that's why the games play out differently. The storm always ends in a different location, and it just goes slightly different than the game previous to it. Part 3, and the most important. I think the Chapter 2 map is actually the Chapter 1 map, but it's in an alternate dimension version. In the Chapter 1 version, the mothership has already crashed into the map containing the 0 point, and once the 0 point was destabilizing and caused the black hole event, we looped into another alternate dimension where the mothership had yet to crash into the map and take the 0 point. That's why some of the POIs that we see currently in the Chapter 2 map are the exact same as the last map, except, you know, we have a lot of different POIs this season because this is a alternate dimension, so everything's not going to be the same as we stated above, right? Also, Donald Mustard tweeted previously that the Chapter 2 map is not a prequel to the Chapter 1 map, and that's because it isn't. But Donald Mustard always has some kind of, like, you know, read between the lines whenever he tweets. He wouldn't tweet that the Chapter 2 map is isn't a prequel to the Chapter 1 map if there wasn't something hidden in that tweet. And that's because it's not a prequel. It is the exact same map, but in an alternate dimension where all these events from the Chapter 1 map has yet to happen. So not necessarily going back in time. It's not a prequel. It is the Chapter 1 map. All right, I got a little bonus theory for y'all that kind of goes in with the original theory that I've talked about earlier in this video. So in the Chapter 2 Season 7 cinematic, we see the mothership kind of take in the 0 point, and with that, the foundation got rifted into an ocean is what we see, right? Now, one or two things could be true on this. One, he got rifted into the Chapter 1 map that's been completely destroyed. We don't know. All we see is the ocean, right? Or two, what I think is more likely is that he got rifted into the Chapter 3 map. Now, we know that there's going to be a new map for Chapter 3 because, one, it's already happened for Chapter 2. Two, there's been a bunch of POIs leaked recently that it just couldn't be just map changes for Chapter 2. It has to be a new Chapter 3 map. And also EPIC has hired in a bunch of like landscape designers probably a couple of seasons ago that are probably in the works of making a chapter 3 map. So I believe that we're going to see a lot more of the foundation once chapter 3 actually is available for us to play and look into. Additionally, the 7 are all the same person, right? Now bear with me here. If we know alternate dimensions exist whenever the 0 point gets destable, it would make sense that each one of them is actually the same person. We see in the chapter 1 season X event that a bunch of rifts are opening up to try to control the 0 point from destabilizing and just completely getting rid of the entire map. So for instance, let's say each one of them is just the same person but from a different dimension, so things are going to change. That's why some of them look kind of similar. That's why one of them is a female. Who knows? Different dimensions, different alternate dimensions. That could be the case. The one person from the 7 could actually be female in another dimension. Who knows? Who's to say, right? But this would explain why Singularity and Paradigm look very similar, because even though Singularity is who she is in one dimension, she could be actually part of the 7 in another dimension, which is why we never really see Singularity and Paradigm together. I mean, it's kind of far-fetched, but I mean, with how EPIC likes to do things, everything is just crazy enough to actually be true. And if we're right about all the other alternate dimensions that I stated previously in this video, this isn't too far-fetched to actually be true.